we all know that the conquistadors went through this Llano Estacado, and so back in, 1541 was the first description from one of the conquistadors back to Spain, talking about how this area was vast, empty, and, void of vegetation and so forth. So, that was like the first contact with the Spanish speaker in this area.
We look at the Mexican American experience in what is now the United States. They're not a recent immigrant group. I mean, many Tejano families trace their lineage back to the 17th and 18th century. It's a long history. Talking about the European contact and exchange, many Tejano families trace their lineage even to 200-300 years.
And then it wasn't back until the late 1800s, early 1900s when Mexican Americans and Mexicans began moving to this area. And of course they brought with them their own traditions, their own ways. So that started, changing the culture and adding to it.
When we understand the early years of the state, or what we now call Texas, some of the cultural characteristics and cultural values are shared with what we now call Northern Mexico. This idea of independence, this sort of frontier identity, of resilience, of self-dependency and so forth. Those things that we have now adopted as Texas values, those are uniquely sort of frontier characteristics that in Northern Mexico were very much exercised. So there was this notion of, we need to rely on ourselves. This idea of pulling yourself on your bootstraps, those sort of vague and sort of valuable assets that we like to consider ourselves as part of Texas identity are very much part of Northern Mexico or Northern New Spain.
When they first came, a lot of them were migrant workers. A lot of them were laborers. As Lubbock grew, jobs became available with the railroad systems. Other people had come to this region as sheep herders, mainly in San Angelo, I think some in Slayton also. Some Mexican Americans began catering to their own, because when you don't have access to a grocery store, if somebody opens up one in your barrio, well, they're going to make some money. They saw an obstacle and they met it.
It is a fusion. And I think that's why I would, many Texas scholars like to debate, is Texas Southern, is Texas Western? I simply say that Texas is actually a borderlands. And it's not just because it borders Mexico or borders Oklahoma or New Mexico or what have you. It's a borderland that it's a fusion of cultures. It's a fusion of what we're seeing, and it sort of results in this sort of unique identity. So we have to sort of understand that it is a borderland where you have this exchange going on between different ethnic groups and different cultures, and I think that's what Texas is sort of gaining from Latinos, especially Latino Americans or Mexican Americans more specifically.
There was a lot of prejudice back in that area that was, in-your-face type prejudice. A lot of places here would have signs up that would say, "No Latins or dogs allowed." I mean, that was not uncommon. And it wasn't just Lubbock, it was the whole region. And so that affected not only, shopping, but also affected education, access to medical care. So all aspects of their life were affected by this system of, we can do this, but you can't.
Family within Latinos, especially what is now Texas and Northern Mexico, and that it was very much a very close-knit family, but it was also an extended family, an understanding of community, because especially in this area, which we now call the U.S.-Mexico borderlands, there was a sense of isolation. There was this sort of distance between themselves and the centers of power, like in Mexico City at the time. So there was a dependency on your close relatives, but also your community members. So there's always a sense of family.
I tell people, my mom, when I went to college, my mother gave me a bag of burritos and a bendición. And that's all I needed. A couple of burritos sustained me, and a little blessing. And a lot of us, I give that same blessing to my sons every morning when I drop them at school.
I grew up in a very devout Catholic family, so it was always instilled, first God, then family, and never forget your community.
I actually left school. I had been there for two quarters, and I went to a school that was a quarter system. I went there, and in my third quarter in the spring, I dropped out in my first year. And I didn't like it. I didn't like being away from my family. I went home, and my grandfather was sick. When I went to see my grandfather, I told him, he said, "Well, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I left school." He said, "Well, what do you mean you left school?" In Spanish, obviously. I said, "Well, you're here. My mom's crying, my Nina's crying, my sisters are crying. What kind of man would not be here with you and my family when this was happening. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, ¿sabes qué? Lo que me va a pasar, me va a pasar. He said, pero vas a ir para atrás a hacer la escuela. Y vas a ser un hombre hecho y derecho. So you're going to go back there, and you're going to be a good man, and you're going to finish out a good, straight, honest man. And that's what I did. And he saved my life. He couldn't save his life, but he saved mine. That's what it means to be part of this culture and this family.
You know, as a young girl growing up in Lubbock, and, you know, I was blessed to be around all these folks that were making an impact, that were starting this and starting that, that were taking on issues of concern of our community. I was blessed to be in that environment. But now, I mean, I think it's just so important for our children to also see themselves and the contributions that we make every single day, and that we're also experts in area, that we are professionals in the community, all the positive strides that we try to make, and not to mention just, you know, by a family having that stability because they're, you know, working family with their kids in school. I think that is a reflection of what we're trying to contribute and how important that is for Lubbock.
Latino history is American history. And that's one thing that, again, this is something that sort of gets lost when we talk about the Mexican-American struggle for civil rights, is that the idea is that, well, they're foreigners, they're immigrants. Well, no, as a matter of fact, there's been many, many generations that have been in the United States that are American citizens fighting for their civil rights as American citizens.
It's so important for these young people so they can see the contributions that we've made to this community and that they were very, very impactful.
Well, I think it's like anything else. The characteristics are about the stories. They tell something of value. And so that's what they're all about. It's, you know, what the story is.
It didn't come out of nowhere. History doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's an evolving story. It's an evolving narrative that affects each and every one of us.
It's imperative that we understand the narratives of each other so that we can work together toward even a greater America. It's not just where we come from as Latinos, but where we end as Latino Americans.
It comes from Mexico, of course. It's been part of Mexico forever. Don't think it's been ballet folklorico, it's just been dancing. People in Mexico, they would celebrate, and how they celebrate is through dance. Ballet folklorico is just one of the aspects of Mexico in our traditions and our heritage, something that was brought from generations back when how they entertained themselves. I mean, back in the 1900s, they would do it in the camps, what we call campesinos, and they would play the music and they would dance, they would go around the fire and sing ballads. So ballet folklorico is an important part of our culture.
Such a big difference from practice to being on stage with lights and people actually watching us. It's really amazing. Even if someone records us and we watch it, we know what we're doing right and we can tell what we need to improve on.
I think the Like, if we're barely first trying to learn a dance, we haven't even done steps or just listening to the music, I think that's a major part because it started from nothing and it came together as this huge dance performance. I think my favorite part about performing is seeing everybody's faces and them smiling, enjoying what we do.
When we practice, we'll practice standing still, or we'll practice without dresses, we'll practice without the music. My favorite part is performing and seeing it all come together. And I love making people smile because of what I can do and what I've learned.
I believe that it's more of a part of us. Us as, I'm saying us as Mexicanos, us as Latin Americans. We bring things, not only ballet folklorico, but traditions within our own families. Yes, it is important what we bring to the generations after us. I mean, just as simple as the mother, from the very beginning when they are able to put their child on their lap, they begin doing the music, they begin doing the dance with the child. So it becomes part of who we are and how we pass on these things to our children. And I think that if we don't teach them who we are or where we come from, that gets lost.
Negrita de mis pesares, ojos del papel volando, negrita de mis pesares, ojos del papel volando, a todos diles que sí, pero no les digas cuando así me dijiste a mí.
Religion has come into play within my work a lot, as well as women's rights. Those two aspects have always come in and played a very strong, dialogue within the work. But another aspect, I guess, that has filtered in there that I really didn't think about, but I think subconsciously it was there, racial issues, social issues, all of that kind of compounded coming into play. Also the dynamics that I experienced as a child growing up in West Texas. As a child, I can remember developing a friendship with one of my schoolmates, and when I say as a child, I was about first or second grade, and she invited me to her home to come and play with her after school. So we were walking home, and her home was on the way to my home. And so we stopped, and she said, well, let me go tell my mom that you're here and we want to play outside. She went inside, and I could hear her mother yelling and saying that, no, I was not allowed to be in the house. I wasn't allowed to be in the premises, and she was not going to be playing with me. So she went and slammed the door. And I just stood there, and I thought, well, maybe she's just mad at her daughter. So I waited and waited outside, as a child would do, not understanding that kind of dynamic. It wasn't until I got home, after about 30 minutes, I finally walked home, and I told my mom, and she said, well, you can't go over there anymore. And I said, why not? And she just explained, she said, well, some people don't like Mexicans, and that's what we are. That was very difficult for me as a child that's about 7. you can speak, as I said, metaphorically, and you can speak about issues. You can speak about things that maybe you are experiencing in life, and there were other people that are experiencing that as well. They are experiencing discrimination in different ways. They are experiencing, the hardships of life in a different manner. They're experiencing the glory of life in a different way. So what a visual artist can do is express what they know best upon that palette, upon that surface, or upon that sculpture, or whatever it is that they're creating, and be able to have that dialogue. For me, as a visual artist, that's the best way that I feel that I speak. That's my language. What it is the visibility of people that is significant and important, and it helps to kind of melt things together and not create such strong boundaries between people. I think at an early age, I decided that I was going to be the best that I could be, and that hopefully, people at some point would be able to look beyond the color. They'd be able to look beyond the ethnicity, and to look at either the talent, to look at the abilities, the strengths, whatever it is that the individual has. And I think part of that is due to the upbringing that I had within my family. Family said, just do the best that you possibly can and move forward. So that's what I've done. It's given me strength in terms of determination, I guess, and also saying that I can move forward. I'm just as good as anyone else as long as I can prove myself that, I'm talented, I'm knowledgeable, I'm intelligent. I may not be the best of the best, but hey, I'm okay.
In 1970, I was a policeman for the city of Lubbock, and the Lubbock Police Department was the sponsor of the Golden Gloves boxing programs. We would raise funds for them, we would train them, we would travel, and that's how the program originally got started. It was a great program. It was a program that was actually ahead of its times. It was a crime prevention program. And then in 1977, we had a different city council came in, and they came in to analyze the police department, see how they could better utilize the police personnel. They took the program away from the police department and put us all back working on patrol. And I remember we told all the kids, we had hundreds of kids in the gym, and we told them, look, we're not going to sponsor anymore, the program is ended. Here all of a sudden we got these kids that wanting to continue in the boxing program, and I just didn't have it in my heart to say no. So we started working out here at the Boys Club. Wesley Strength was the director at that time. And I came and talked to him and said, look, I got some boys that want to box, but I don't have a facility, don't have any equipment, don't have anything. He said, we're for kids. Anything's going to help kids, we're for it. He said, if you want to help kids on your own time, we can provide your room. We don't have a budget that can buy you any equipment or pay any travel expenses, but if you don't mind, just working out here, we'll let you. I reached out to the community and got some sponsors, told them what I was doing, and so they donated some money to buy equipment, a little bit of traveling expense money, and so I set up a gym for us. And that's how we got the program started, initially in 1977.
Ever since I can remember walking, I started coming up here. And I remember my first punch bag was actually a pillow with a rope tied around it, and they would hang it from the door sill. And that's what I would punch. So it was it's kind of like I was born into it.
In '95, my father died from a heart attack, and Edward basically stepped right in. I mean, kind of filled that void.
I've known Joe since he was born. We were coming here because our dads were both coaching here, and so I've known him all my life.
When I was younger, I always used to come and play basketball, and I always used to see the gym open, everybody working out and playing boxing. And I just told my mom, I was like, Mom, I want to box. Ever since then, I just stuck in it. I said, it's something I want to do.
The program was designed to help kids, keep them out of trouble, help them become better citizens. It's about providing a need for the kids, giving them an opportunity to do something. It's our responsibility as people to provide that need for those kids.
We do have a lot of kids that come from single-parent homes. They might have a mom or a dad who are struggling just to make ends meet.
Most of these kids from this neighborhood that come from broken homes or that are at-risk youth are wanting to be a part of something.
We're all like family, and anybody that comes in the gym, we still treat them like family.
Coming here and working hard every day helps instill that drive to just succeed. And when you have that mentality that you're going to give it your all no matter what you do, then success just follows.
This program has opened many doors for me.
Now that we're grown men, we can look back and fully appreciate being a part of something that not only helped us to develop, but also helped other kids, to become productive citizens.
That's what controls the fight. The desire that these kids have to do something good for themselves, it has paid off for them.
These guys come back up 20, 30 years after having participated in this boxing club and say, hey, it probably saved my life. I hope people look back at the Lubbock Warriors and say they really did care about kids.
God gives everybody a gift. And I believe that the gift he gave me was to maybe help guide some kids.